As I walked home from school, I couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. It was a familiar sensation, one that had been haunting me for the past few weeks. I quickened my pace, trying to ignore the unease that was creeping up my spine. But as I turned the corner onto my street, I saw a figure standing at the end of my driveway. It was a man, tall and menacing, with a dark hood covering his face. My heart raced as I fumbled for my keys, struggling to unlock the door. I could hear his footsteps getting closer, and I could feel his eyes burning into my back. Finally, I managed to unlock the door and rushed inside, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against the door, trying to catch my breath and calm my racing heart. But then I heard a knock on the door. My blood ran cold as I slowly turned around. The man now was standing on my porch, still wearing his dark hood. I could see the glint of a knife in his hand. I wanted to scream, but my voice was stuck in my throat. He knocked again, but this time his voice echoed through the door. "Let me in, Sarah. I just want to talk." How did he know my name? I thought, panic rising in my chest. I backed away from the door, my mind racing. I had to call the police. I reached for my phone, but it wasn't in my pocket. I must have left it in my locker at school. I cursed myself for being so careless. The man's voice grew more urgent. "Come on, Sarah. Open the door. I wouldn't hurt you." But I knew better. I heard about the string of murders that had been happening in our town. Young girls, just like me, that had just been disappearing without a trace. And now, this man was at my doorstep, claiming that he just wanted to talk. I knew he was a serial killer that everyone was talking about. I could feel my legs trembling as I backed away from the door. I had to find a way to escape. I ran to the back door, but it was locked. I was trapped. The voice grew angry. "Open the door, Sarah. I won't ask again." I could hear the sound of the doorknob being twisted violently. He was trying to break in. Adrenaline surged through my body as I desperately looked for a way out. Then I remembered the small window in the basement. It was my only chance. I ran down the stairs and threw open the basement door. But before I could reach the window, the man grabbed me from behind and covered my mouth with his hand. I struggled and kicked, trying to break free, but he was too strong. He dragged me to the corner of the room and pushed me against the wall. I could feel the cold cement against my back as he towered over me, his knife gleaming in the dim light. "Why are you doing this?" I managed to choke out. The man chuckled darkly. "Because I can, Sarah. And because you're just like all the others, weak and helpless." I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes as I realized that was it. That was how I was going to die. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the inevitable. But then, I heard a loud bang, and the man collapsed onto the floor. I opened my eyes to see my neighbor, Mr. Johnson, standing in the doorway with a shotgun in his hands. "Are you all right, Sarah?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. I nodded, unable to speak. Mr. Johnson called the police, and they arrived within minutes. The man was arrested, and I was taken to the hospital to be checked for any injuries. It was a terrifying experience, one that would haunt me for the rest of my life. But as the days passed, the nightmares became more real. I could still feel the man's hands on me, his breath on my neck. I couldn't sleep, afraid that he would just come back for me. And then I started seeing him everywhere, in the shadows, in the reflection of mirrors, even in my own room. I knew it was just my imagination, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that he was still out there, watching me. One day, I received a letter in the mail. It was from the man who had tried to kill me. In the letter, he described in detail how he had been watching me for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He talked about how he'd been following me, learning my routines, and how he carefully planned for every step of the attack. And then, he revealed the most chilling detail of it all. He was still out there, waiting for another opportunity to finish what he started. I was terrified. How could he have known all of this? How could he have been watching me without even me realizing it? I went to the police, but they couldn't find any evidence of the man's whereabouts. He had disappeared without a trace. But I knew he was still out there, and I knew he was still watching me. I couldn't escape the feeling that he was always lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. I lived in constant fear, always looking over my shoulder, never feeling safe. Years went by, and the memories of the terrifying day slowly faded. But I could never forget the man who had tried to kill me. And then one night, as I was getting ready for bed, I saw him. He was standing outside my bedroom window, his dark hood covering his face just like the first time I saw him. I screamed and ran to my parents' room, but when we went back to my room, there was no one there. My parents brushed it off as a nightmare, but I knew the truth. The man was still out there, watching and waiting. From that day on, I never felt safe in my own house. I always had the feeling that he was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for his next victim. And even though he was never caught, I knew that he could always be a part of me, a constant reminder of the horror that I had endured.